Welcome to Never Again Is Now, a podcast about anti Semitism. I am Evelyn Marcus.
And I am Phyllis Dimbler Miller.
1 year has passed since the October 7 massacre in Israel, the biggest pogrom on Jews since the Holocaust. Thousands were brutally slaughtered, raped, bereaved from their family and friends, taken hostage, displaced. The Jewish world is shocked. The trauma in Israel is tremendous. Is there something we can learn from our history of the Holocaust that can help us cope with this tremendous disaster? We discuss this with Sharon Buenos in Israel. She is the global director of Zikaron Besalon, the organization in Israel that brings people together with Holocaust survivors to keep the history of the Holocaust alive. Sharon, thank you so much for coming on our show.
Thank you for having me.
Today, I asked the first question, which is, could you please tell us some more about your organization and what is its mission and what are its activities?
Thank you. Zikaron Basalon translates to memories in the living room. And this is exactly what we're doing. We're bringing the memories, the testimonies of Holocaust survivors to homes all around the world. What started 12 years ago with the first gathering in one Holocaust survivor is now becoming a tradition among Jewish communities and Israeli communities in 65 countries with 2 million participants every Yom HaShoah, every Holocaust Memorial Day. The idea is that we connect to the memory of the Holocaust from a personal perspective. We want to hear a personal story. We want to know what one person went through. And we also want to reflect on that and see how it relates to our lives today. Well, unfortunately, today more than ever.
And what are you going to do when there are no more survivors left?
This question has been troubling us at the organization. I think COVID was a big part of us thinking, okay, what are we going to do with a world without survivors? Although it's hard to think about that because so many have become such personal and close friends of ours. We are working very hard on that. One is working with the next generation, the second, the third, the fourth, and soon the fifth generations that will have to take the responsibility in making sure that those testimonies are not forgotten. We are also working very closely with the USC Shoah Foundation and Yad Vashem when it comes to recorded testimonies, which is a huge asset. It has historical value, but also the value of remembering people that are possibly not here with us anymore. And we want to remember them as well. We also work with volunteers who are hoping to take a testimony if they don't need to necessarily have a personal connection to the Holocaust, but they can have maybe a neighbor or a relative, distant relative, or even take a story of a victim. So we are preparing, but while we are preparing, we are working very, very hard on making sure that every Holocaust survivor that's still uh, able and wants to share their testimony, that we will have the opportunity for them. It's very important.
So, when October 7 happened, my partner Rosa and I said to each other that we were glad that our parents, who were Holocaust survivors, weren't alive anymore to witness the hatred and cruelty towards Jews repeating itself. Um, were you worried that Holocaust survivors would not be able to cope with October 7, that memories of the Holocaust would be triggered overwhelmingly?
Wow, I think it's such a complicated question and has so many answers. When we woke up, so I was here in Tel Aviv in the morning of Simchat Torah on that awful October 7 day. When we woke up to the sound of siren, we at first I thought, okay, this must be a mistake because I was positive that things have settled down in that part of our country of the world on the Gaza border. But very quickly we realized that this is something completely different than none of us ever experienced. And we have a WhatsApp group for the Zikaron Basalon team. And I think by 9:30, 10 a.m. already, so 2.5 hours in, we said, okay, we must do something for the survivors because they're sitting in their homes now. Some of them might have to be in the mamad, in the safe room, in the shelter. What is going on with them? And by noon, we've divided between the team, we've divided the phone numbers of survivors in the south, but by the
You mean
evening,
Holocaust? You mean Holocaust? Yeah,
Holocaust survivors,
yeah.
the numbers of Holocaust survivors on our database, to just ring them up and see if they're okay. And by that evening, we've started working with our huge volunteer community in Israel to reach out to survivors all over Israel because we realized that if a survivor is in Hod Sharon or in the north or in the south, it doesn't matter because they're experiencing exactly what we're all experiencing. And I have to say, just, this is a year in. And yesterday I went to visit a friend of mine, a Holocaust survivor, Yehudit, who is 86 years old. And I went to wish her Shana Tova. And she said to me, she kept referring to October 7 and said, the second I started watching the news, it took me back to my childhood as a 4-year-old running from the Nazis, escaping gunshots. So we were very worried for the well-being of our survivors, and we started operating an emergency call center to support our survivors. But while we were very worried at our survivors, and with every right to be, because we saw the trigger and we saw how it influenced them and the impact that it had on them, we also understood that they offer us so much than just their history. And they teach us the most valuable lessons of hope, of resilience. And this is where we, alongside our emergency call center, when we took care of every need that they asked for, we also thought, okay, what is this that we can do with the survivors to support everything that's happening in the country?
Wow, that's very powerful.
And that's
Um,
when you brought together Holocaust survivors and survivors of October 7th, right? What did you hope to achieve
Yes.
by this? What was your plan initially and how has it morphed? How has it changed along the way?
A couple of weeks in, we did a campaign with two Holocaust survivors to kind of re give that hope from them to the rest of the country. And we saw the impact of a very short clip on, we got thousands and thousands of response saying that
Wait, can you tell us a little about the clip? What did the Holocaust?
it was just a short clip of Hannah Gofrit and Mordechai Chechanover, both Holocaust survivors. Hannah Gofrit is actually the first survivor to speak at the Zikaron Basalon gathering 12 years ago, and 13 years ago, rather. And in the clip, they just talked about how they felt on October 7th and how difficult this was, but how they know that we will prevail. And they know that nobody can do anything to us. And we saw a huge response, a respond on social media, and we thought, okay, we have something here. And we started also to do Zikaron Basalon for solidarity missions and with children of evacuated communities and the Nova Festival survivors. and what we hope to achieve, and I think we were very lucky to be able to achieve it, is not only to show the survivors of October 7 that they can come out of it and they can go back to life and they can draw their inspiration from the survivors that they met, but I think we also impacted the survivors because I think that they realized that
You mean the
their
Holocaust
traumas,
survivors?
the Holocaust survivors, sorry, I have to be clear on that. But
Yeah.
for the Holocaust survivors to have that opportunity to be even more meaningful because they get so much from doing a Zikaron Basalon as it is because they meet younger generations and they are able to pass their testimonies and it gives them a sense of it's really good for their well-being. But here there's another layer. Here is how their trauma and how they dealt with the worst of humanity can actually help those that are going through something on a smaller scale. It's not a Shoah, it's not the Holocaust, it's a terrible pogrom. But for so many, that day and this year has been so difficult to cope with. And to see the survivors coming out from everything that they've been through and establishing uh, families, finding love, building communities, building countries, businesses, so much. I think this is a very powerful lesson.
Yes. Yes. So, um, how did October 7 in general impact Holocaust survivors in Israel, from what you know?
Um, I have an old colleague of mine, Batya Holin, is from Kfar Aza, and she survived October 7, and she's a photographer, and she became quite well known. She goes around and she speaks a lot. Um, 6 months before October 7, she had an exhibition with a photo exhibition with a partner that she was able to find in Gaza. And only on October 7, and it was a whole story, I won't go into all the details, but only on October 7, she realized that when he called her, that he wasn't who she thought he was. And he started trying to get information out of her, and she was devastated. And the kibbutz started using the word Shoah Shoah. A few months after October 7, Batya had another exhibition of images and text messages that were sent in the kibbutz on that day, and I went to see it, and Batya shared with us that when they started processing what they've been through and used the word Shoah, they all agreed that if we use the word Shoah, we must ask permission. And you
Mm.
ask permission from the Holocaust survivors. And she said that when they went to ask Holocaust survivors, what do they think? Some said, of course, you cannot compare it to the Holocaust. How can you compare this to the Holocaust? This was one day. We have a country, we have an army. You can't compare. Some said, of course, this was the Shoah. You can compare, of course. Some even said that this is worse than the Shoah because this happened on our land and this happened when we have an army. So you see, it's this, and for us Holocaust survivors, whatever they say, we respect, and they can say whatever they want, but there are so many opinions. But yes, this day affected them tremendously. I know that shortly after we've lost um, many survivors, and some part of me believes that they passed because of a broken heart after witnessing what we've been through. And this is not only true for Holocaust survivors that are in Israel. We are in touch with thousands of Holocaust survivors all over the world. And when we when we spoke to them before Yom HaShoah, each and every one of them mentioned something, talked about the hostages, brought up October 7th. So it, of course, spoke about the rise in anti-Semitism globally. So this is something that Holocaust survivors around the world have to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, Sharon, could you please share some more stories with us of how Holocaust survivors helped survivors of October 7th?
I think um, I think it's rather personal. I'll say that we see the impact um, in those gatherings and how this encourages the survivors of October 7 to choose life and to be more active. Um, it's hard for me to give you individual stories because I think for the sake of their privacy, but I can say maybe one that is well known. It was also published. Ziv Abud, who is a young survivor of the Nova Festival. Her fiance Elia is still a hostage. She was in the same migunit as Aner Shapira and Hirsch Goldberg Poland, and she survived the grenades being thrown, and luckily we believe that the terrorists thought she might be dead. That's why they didn't take her. She lost her nephew that day as well. And we introduced Steve and Aliza Landau, who is a Holocaust survivor from Poland. And Aliza has a remarkable testimony. When she was left with her brother and her father in the woods in Poland, her brother starved to death, and her then Nazi officers found her father holding her brother and led them into uh, um, a place where they had to dig a hole before they were shot. And I'm ruining this because I'm making it very, very short, but this is a very, very, Annalisa is a very good and dear friend of mine. But Aliza was 6 years old at the time, and she's holding on to her father's leg while he's holding her dead brother. And her father told her, "Don't worry, Aliza, this won't hurt." And with the help of a God, miracle, however, kindness, I don't know how you want to call it, but she wasn't shot, but she does fall into the grave, to the mass grave, and she realizes after a while that she's not dead, and she's climbing out of the hole, climbing, looking for um, the tree roots, and she's climbing out, and she survived. And Ziv, the same. She was surrounded by bodies, and she had to stay there for a few hours before she realized she's alive. And I think the climbing out for Aliza, the climbing out, the coming out of that hole into life, that story really resonated with Ziv. And while she's fighting to get her fiance freed and back from being a hostage in Gaza, she's also trying to live and and to choose life every day. And I think that special bond between the two of them is very, very unique.
Yes. Yes. Wow. Um, Zikaron Besalon has developed a guide for the collective processing of the October 7 tragedy and its aftermath. You called it the Hope Kit. Can you please tell us more about this guide of hope?
It's a play of words on our host kit. We have a host kit to guide our hosts of Zikaron Basalon all around the world, and it's available on our website in many languages.
We'll give the
But the
URL.
hope, lovely, thank you. But the Hope Kit was actually I spoke with some friends at Anu a museum, at the Jewish People Museum, and there is a research that was made in the United States talking about how families with a strong narrative that passed from generation to generation are able to cope with trauma better. And who's better in passing narratives from generation to generation than us? Every festival, we tell the story of that festival, and not only the festivals, but we really do share the stories of our ancestors. And I'm sure that every one of our listeners or our viewers can think back of all the stories that they know of their families. And we realize that that is a muscle that we have.
Mm.
And so we've created together with Anu this Hope Kit, and we've used for this purpose the recorded testimony of Edith Eger, Dr. Edith Eger, who is, I think, the biggest optimist and someone we can all, one that we all admire, but we can all be inspired by. And so it's a testimony, and then it has all the other parts of Zikaron Basalon, where we encourage people to think about their personal history and how this feeds into their ability to deal with everything that's coming our way.
So let's
Amazing.
talk
That's
about
fantastic.
keeping the history of the Holocaust alive. Why do you think? I know I have my reasons why, and Evelyn has her reasons, but why do you think it's important to keep the history of the Holocaust alive?
Hmm. Um, I think the Holocaust is I think the Holocaust is not just something that happened to the Jewish people. I think the Holocaust is something that happened to the world. And I think I believe we owe it for the victims. We owe it to them to honor their memory and keep the memory of the Holocaust alive. And of course, we also owe it to the survivors. But I also think we owe it to the world. Sorry, this is not a siren. Whew. We owe it to the world to keep it. We see what's happening in the world today. We see how fringe opinions are rising again. We see how it it feels that we're spinning out of control almost. And for us to remember the most significant event that happened to humanity is crucial. So we can promise this will not happen again, and not just to the Jewish people. So it doesn't happen again to anyone.
I
Yes.
think it's so important that we explain to people not just Shoah, but what led up to it. As we've all probably noticed, that in Austria, the far right political group has just done really well in parliamentary elections. And I think in America, even American Jews who know about the Holocaust do not know how between World War I and World War II, this built up and built up and built up, and then it was too late. So I can't, and I speak for Evelyn too, can't thank you enough for what your group does. I mean, it's amazing, amazing. Uh, Evelyn, do you want to go ahead?
Yep. So Sharon, what advice do you have for our individual listeners on how to process the October 7th tragedy, how to help others with that, and how to help keeping the history of the Holocaust alive?
Ooh, it's a big question.
It's a big
I
question.
think
That's correct.
I think I'll start with the end, how to keep the memory of the Holocaust. That's a very simple answer. You host a Zikaron Basalon, and if you go on our website, you'll be able to find testimonies, information, a host kit, everything you need in order to create a gathering and to make sure that we connect and we remember the Holocaust.
Can I clarify something? We've talked about both the host kit and the hope kit. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and they are both on our website.
Okay. Okay. Keep going.
Um, so this is how you remember in a meaningful way. And of course, I don't need to remind the audience that you have important museums and so much resources available at a click of a button. So it's important that it's a reliable resource. Yad Vashem, USC Shoah Foundation, the Holocaust Museum. There are so many opportunities. And if you want to bring it home, Zikaron Basalon is probably how you could do it best. Um, Now, in terms of processing October 7 and dealing with that, I think it is also I think it depends on who you have around you and what is the context of what you're trying to achieve. Because we've heard many many, for example, Jewish students or young professionals or all around the world that have said to us that since October 7th, they feel they not necessarily talk about anti-Semitism, but they feel a cold shoulder from their colleagues, from their fellow students, and they don't know how to deal with that and exactly what to do. So one, I think it's really important to have a strong support group and a place for you to kind of uh, process and share and talk. We believe in talking in Zikaron Basalon. Um, and if you could have that through your local community, through your Jewish groups in your university, um, your family, of course, your friends, use those groups to be able to process and to speak about that. I'll
Mhm.
say that one of the things that we are working on now for October 7 is an initiative that started because of Zikaron Basalon, together with many organizations here in Israel that are dealing with mental health, and it is to bring survivors of October 7 into Salonim across Israel. And
Mhm.
this is part of their healing process.
Mhm.
So we know that speaking about things, don't bottle things up. Make sure that you find a friend, at least, to speak about that. Connect to your Jewish communities, to your Israeli communities. Connect with us.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's great. Great advice. Don't stay isolated with your feelings about October 7, whether no matter how far away you were on October 7th from what happened. If it impacted you emotionally, you're saying don't stay isolated with it, but share it with other people and talk about it. And maybe that's also how you can help other people, right? Lend them a listening ear and make sure that if you know anybody else who you can imagine is impacted emotionally by October 7th, and for instance, when the 1 year anniversary is coming is happening, um, get in touch with that person, speak about it. It's so much better, and it's a little bit more healing than staying isolated with those feelings.
You
I
know, a
so
lot of
agree
young
with that.
people, I can only speak in the United States, a small sample, felt very isolated at work. And for example, without naming names, one major
I'm
Hollywood,
really sorry. I'm really sorry. This is the siren now. I'm
I'm
really
so
sorry.
sorry.
I have to
Be
cut it
safe,
short.
be
be
safe, and
safe.
Just one
we
last
will.
thought. We have 101 hostages in Gaza. Do everything in your power to raise awareness for them. I have to go.
Bye.
Okay, we will. Stay safe, Sharon, and hope.
Okay, so just so our listeners don't know, and as I said, I'll try not to cry. Sharon warned us. We're filming this on October 1st in preparation for October 7th. And she's in Tel Aviv. And they were told today it's evening in Israel, so it's Tuesday evening, to stay close to their safe rooms. And she said that the interview might be interrupted by sirens to go to their safe room. And that's what just happened. Evelyn, you want to say anything about that? Imagine living all the time with the knowledge that even before October 7th, I saw a documentary recently about kibbutzim in the South before October 7th. You know, you're eating dinner and the sirens go off. And it's not just you're not eating dinner, it's your life that you're worried about. And she has her husband and children are there. So, as on the eve of Rosh Hashanah, which is between this interview and when this goes live, we do pray for the safety of all Jews. And Evelyn, you can finish this. Usually I finish, I say, I thank Sharon, but she's not here, but it was an amazing interview. I thank our listeners. If you want to know anything more about Evelyn and myself and our work, you can go to Never Again Is Now podcast, and it's on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube. You seem a little affected by the sirens. And as we say when we end every show, unless Evelyn wants to say a last word, Evelyn, do you want to say anything?
I just want to say that today is October 1st. We don't know how this attack on Israel, obviously, there's an attack going on right now, and the sirens are going off. How this is going to go, but let's all think of the people in Israel. Let's all reach out to the ones we know and wish them, safety and give them hope for a better year to start this week. A year, hopefully, that will see peace for Israel and for the Jewish people in the world. And we have to stay strong. We have to fight. We have to speak up against anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism and for also Israel's rights
To
to exist and to defend itself.
And we need to help bring the hostages home. And I would just add a little personal note. As I wrote to an Israeli today, Shana Tova, a year ago, Shana Tova was just like a greeting. Now I didn't know what to do. I wanted to like add extra words. I mean, it's just really a difficult time for all of us. So we just pray, and I do mean pray, that it will get better very soon.
Yes, and
And
we
as
keep
we end
hope.
every yes, and as we end every show, though, we say, please speak up against anti-Semitism and all hate.